Hello and welcome back to the Kalopsia podcast. I'm your host Sydney and I'm thrilled to have you guys back here with me for this week's episode. So this week I wanted to do a little continuation of last week's episode, which I did on emotional bravery and emotional courage. Now, when I was kind of posting the promo for it, a couple people were commenting on the clips, and it brought something to my attention and something that I haven't really touched on. When it comes to emotional bravery, when it comes to leaning into our authenticity, is the fact that, at the bottom line, we are afraid of that discomfort of being rejected. We're afraid of rejection. We understand that rejection is redirection, but it can be really hard to make that mindset shift. It can be really hard to actually put it into play. Now, last week I kind of discussed, what we really want when it comes to building new connections, what we really want to see in people, whether that's online or in person, is we want to see authenticity. And I feel like the way that society and pop culture and social media is going and is evolving, we're more susceptible to falling into trends in behavior, trends in, fashion, trends in makeup. And it's almost like fighting against the tide, trying to lean into our individuality and trying to be unique in that way. But it can be really hard to divert from that because of this fear of rejection. But now I want to propose to you that we think about it like scientists. Let's think about it like it is an experiment. The truth is that building rejection tolerance is basically like a social, emotional experiment on yourself. So last week, we acknowledged that it's easier said than done to remain authentic, to remain individual. We want to be unique, but the fear of adversity is going to stand in our way. Now, how do we build that tolerance? How do we build that resilience towards rejection? Trial by error. Trial by error will change our lives. We have a lot to learn from scientists. When you think of scientific experiments, what you're really doing is you decide what you want your hypothesis to be, and you determine your null hypothesis. And now, what is a null hypothesis? A null hypothesis is something that you want to disprove. A null hypothesis is basically saying that the observed results had no significant difference from our expected results. But the way that experiments are shaped, if you didn't know, is that basically scientists are going to construct experiments that are kind of built to test this null hypothesis. We're trying to disprove it. We're trying to prove, okay, it doesn't work in this condition, it may not work in this condition, it may not work in this position. The bottom line is that when you are a scientist, you are never trying to prove your point. That is the biggest red flag when it comes to a method in an experiment. What you really want is to find ways that your hypothesis could not work, right? So the language that is actually used when it comes to scientific experiments is, can I reject this null hypothesis? Can I reject and say that I'm rejecting that there was no significant difference? Or I can fail to reject it. AKA, I am agreeing that there was no significant difference and thus my hypothesis was correct. But that language in its own, I think, is so interesting. The fact that you can either reject your hypothesis or fail to reject your null hypothesis. It's not even trying to prove, it's not saying that. Something else that's the biggest red flag that I learned in my background in chemistry and bio is that you're never trying to write down in a lab report or anything like that. This proves that, you might say this confirms or this shows, but you would never use the language this proves. And so we have a lot to learn from this language, from the scientific method, because of this kind of nature of wanting to first disprove and wanting to expose your experiment, expose your method to different types of adversity, different types of obstacles. The bottom line is that when you start with this hypothesis, you are not trying to construct your experiment in a way that is going to guarantee you a positive result. You're not going to choose conditions that are going to guarantee your your hypothesis being correct. Instead, you look for every way that your hypothesis could go wrong. And it's only once it goes wrong again and again and again and again, and you fine tune and you fine tune and you fine tune, that then you have a discovery. Or you put it through all of these different obstacles, you throw this at it, you throw that at it, anything that should make it fail, and it still prevails, then it's like, you know what? I am failing to reject my null hypothesis, and thus my experiment was correct, and I have made a discovery. That's kind of the way that it goes. You're never trying to prove it, and you're never trying to go the easy route. You want to make it as difficult as possible for your experiment to go through as expected, which gives it more credibility. Now, how can we apply this to relationships? How can we apply this to rejection and building our tolerance for rejection? Because I do think the link here is strong. When we think to ourselves about building relationships or, being ourselves, remaining authentic, we think to ourselves, well, I can't do that. I need to fit in. You might not think so consciously. It might not be something that you're telling yourself, I need to fit in, but it's something that our subconscious kind of picks up on. You're not going to do something that goes completely against the status quo, that's going to make people look at you differently, that's going to propose or present adversity or present obstacles in your capacity to be homogeneous within your social group or your workplace or your friend group or whatever that may be. What we are afraid of is going against the current. What we are afraid of is that adversity, those obstacles. But what we need to remember when it comes to the scientific method, in research, failure is not a bad thing. In research, failure is something that is a tool. It is something that helps you build and fine-tune and reach your goal over time. In research, failure is data that you can use to fine-tune your method, your experiments, your hypothesis, your materials. It's all things that have a purpose, that lead you to better understand what it is that you are researching. Each failure brings you one step closer to your goal. Now, we know this on paper when it comes to science, when it comes to, even exercise. When you think of exercise, every time that you are pushing and lifting, let's say that you're lifting weights, every time that you are lifting, you go more and more each time. What they often say is go until failure, do enough reps until failure, then stop. That's it. Next time you go back in, your failure is a step further. Next time you go back in, your failure is a step further. That is what is happening when it comes to emotional resilience and when it comes to our tolerance for rejection as well. But also what we need to remember when it comes to rejection and how to reframe it is that rejection isn't a no. It's not a stop sign. It's redirection. So how do we build this resilience to rejection though? What is the actionable step here? What we learn from science and when we learn from experiments, let's say that you've got some bacteria and you're trying to see how it will fare in different conditions under different chemicals, what you're going to do with those chemicals with that bacteria is you're going to give it controlled exposure. You don't want to kill the bacteria from the jump. You want it to be able to go through all the trials. You want it to last a certain amount of time. You want it to stay alive, but you do want to see what the effect on the species will be, what the effect on the organism will be. And so that's the same thing when it comes to us. When it comes to rejection, controlled exposure is how we wean ourselves on. Maybe instead of, taking your coffee order and walking away, maybe you just say, are you from around here? You say something else that might have really terrified you and you think, oh no, they're going to think I'm weird because I'm asking them what their name is, right? I feel like I find it so difficult to ask what people's names are when I'm a regular at somewhere, which is so silly. It's so silly, but I feel like a lot of us probably feel this way. But I've always wanted to be a regular somewhere and know all the workers. I feel like that was something I genuinely wanted. It's so it's in my small town dream, because I'm from New York. I'm also from a town, but I mostly grew up in the city. So I feel like I never really got that taste of that small town presence, that Gilmore Girl essence. And so something for me that I always wanted to do was build tolerance to kind of just asking people what their names are when I go somewhere and I see the same face all the time. time, but that's controlled exposure. That's step one. The more you do it, the more you'll be able to take. Next time you might be able to ask, I know this is weird, but would you want to grab coffee sometime? I mean, maybe not here, but we could grab coffee sometime. Like if you're moving to a new city and you want to start meeting more people. Controlled exposure is how we build this tolerance, or how we start building this tolerance to rejection. What you're going to notice when it comes to science, or whether it comes to ourselves, is, in the former, you're able to observe every slight iteration of their adaptation. You're able to observe, okay, this is how they reacted on day 1, this is how they reacted on day 7. The same thing is true for ourselves. The first time you're going to ask somebody their name at a coffee shop, your heart's going to be like pumping, 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 like, whoa, this is terrifying, fight or flight activated. I am basically like vibrating with the amount of fear coursing through my body. The seventh time you ask somebody what their name is, it's light work. It's whatever. And you see that adaptation in yourself. You see that resilience building within yourself, and then you're able to do it even more and even more and even more. Another example is, think of immunology. When you have a vaccine, what vaccines are is that they're injected a very small dose of the literal virus that could kill you, or that could whatever, but they're giving it to you in a very, very small dose. And what that leads to is an immune response, so that you are able to fight off that virus later on, because that small dose gave your body enough to build that shield against it. So think about that in the sense of our relationships. What can small little doses of rejection look like? And really think about it. And I feel like writing it down, or really like paying attention to what these doses of rejection are, or what the stakes even are when it comes to rejection. I feel like when we think of rejection, it's something that is almost catastrophized in our heads. We're thinking, how am I going to make it through this? For example, my friend was telling me she hesitates to hang out with strangers, that because she feels like she's not going to have an escape route. She's like, okay, like if I go and hang out with this person, if I'm not vibing with them, like how do I leave? Like how do I like even just give them that rejection? Or whether that's vice versa, whether that person isn't really vibing with them too. That uncertainty is stressing her out, and is holding her back from even like starting out this hangout or whatever. But I feel like when it really boils down to it, the stakes are not that high. If somebody comes to you and says, I am not really vibing, like maybe you wouldn't say it like that, right? You can give them an excuse. You can just say, I have a lot of work to get done at home. Giving out that rejection, it might seem stressful, it might seem like such a catastrophe, but really the stakes are so much lower. Like if somebody comes and tells you, I have so much work to get to at home, honestly, like I can't even, I'm sorry, like I totally forgot about it until now, but, I think I'm just going to head home now. You're going to say, okay, sounds good. I'm just going to go and do my own thing too. It's really not that serious is what I'm trying to get to here. I don't know if that was the best example, because she was kind of worried about giving out that rejection, but I feel like it still stands true. I also feel like giving out rejection can be a good reminder of how unserious rejection is. I mean, this might depend on the person. Maybe some of you guys are vicious with your rejections, right? Because, I mean, that's a different story. But I feel like most of us are trying to, be gentle about the way that we reject people. If somebody says, I would love to have coffee with you or something, and it's like, oh, I don't really want to. It's like, yeah, I would love to. You're going to do it in a polite way, and it's not going to be the end of the world. You're not thinking about them and saying, this is a terrible person, who would ever want to hang out with them? All these negative things that you think people are thinking about you. Nobody is thinking that about them, about you, because you're not thinking that about them, right? You know what I'm trying to say? But for example, minor doses of rejection can include left on red. You're left on red. Maybe you don't get a response back. You send out a text, or you pitch something to someone, an idea, and they don't get back to you. Or maybe someone says, no thanks. It's like, oh, you want to go grab coffee? They're like, no, thank you. It's like, oh, well, this didn't kill me. I am still breathing. I've still got a pulse. I'm still alive. I still have friends, right? It's not like all my friends like disintegrated because this one person rejected me. I'm still able to walk, still got all my bodily executive functions. My brain's still working, life is still going, the earth is still spinning. It's just like every time that you get rejected and you look around and you're like, wait, not much changed from pre-rejection to post-rejection. If anything, I just have this experience on my roster or on my list of experience, on my resume is what I mean to say. Now I have this rejection on my resume. I know that I can do it. I know that I got through it, and now I can try again, or not, but I can try again because it didn't kill me the first time, so I can go ahead and try again the second time. And what I'm describing is that emotional resilience, that neuroplasticity, really. It's just like when you think of exercise, like we talked about earlier. When you are pushing till failure, you're getting stronger. Every time that you feel weak, you're getting stronger. Every time you feel dumb, you're getting smarter. Every time that you get knocked down, you're getting more emotionally resilient. And so you can't build that resilience if you don't put yourself out there. You can't build that tolerance to rejection if you don't start with small doses. I feel like something that I personally struggled with is invitations, or how to deal with invitations, or how to deal with, building connections when it's not like that somebody else is chasing you. And I feel like the show Adults, which I've talked about on the podcast before, it has my favorite podcaster of the moment, Owen Thiel, in it. And I absolutely love the show. The more I think about it, the more I love the show. So you guys should really, really watch it. I was saying Overcompensating, this other show he's also in, was better, which I do believe in, but Adults is also really, really good. And you guys should go watch it. But something I saw somebody online say, well, that was like crazy alliteration. Somebody said that show is going to bring back the resurgence of emotional bravery and courage and, people trying to make connections, because it gave us the return of the sitcom. It gave us a return of a friend group. And I'm not spoiling when I say this, but essentially the main group of people, all the protagonists are... You guys, I just realized I never turned on my mic. So that's fine. I'm gonna work some magic with the mic on the phone, but I really sincerely apologize for the quality of my audio thus far. But anyway, that is so silly. I've been literally looking at the thing and I'm like, why is it just the line? Why is it not bouncing and whatever? Anyway, the technical difficulties happen. That's okay. Let's just keep it pushing. But something that was on that show in Adults is that it's 4 main people. It's this group of 4 friends, right? And they are super close, almost like, new girl type of close. And I feel like the biggest thing that this girl was taking away from it was this is going to be the return of friend groups. Thank God I don't have to be a crazy extrovert anymore, because people are actually going to be open to meeting other people. People want to be in a friend group again. And I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I feel like with the resurgence of friend groups, with the resurgence of people being more emotionally brave, I feel like it's going to be even easier to kind of build that tolerance for rejection. There's going to be more opportunities to practice. Oh yes, this is what I was going to say. For myself, something that I always struggled with was kind of having plans with people. People would invite me somewhere or invite me to hang out with them and their friends. And I would be like, oh, are you sure? Are you really sure? Can you check with them if it's totally okay, totally fine for me to get there? I really don't want to, mess up their day or whatever. Are you positive that they really don't mind me coming? And what that's really, giving off, right, is that, number one, I'm insecure. I'm insecure that my presence is going to be an asset, or that people can actually enjoy getting to know me, even though I'm a stranger. Number 2, I'm underestimating their tolerance for new connections and underestimating their willingness to get to know other people and willingness to have that kind of beginning stage with someone, right? I'm totally cutting that off. And number 3, it's I'm not trusting this person who's inviting me along to know whether or not we'll get along. And sometimes it's good to go in blind. People used to blind date. Think about that. I mean, people still do it, I guess, but like really not that much anymore in my experience. But it's kind of like one of those where I was always so scared to like invite myself or, crash people's plans or, you know, just be bold in that way. But I feel like that a lot of people, like, that used to be normal. It used to be like, oh wow, you're gonna do this, like, can I please come with you? Like, and then it's like, wait, you guys had a fantastic day, and it's just like, you wouldn't have ever had that day to look back on if you hadn't just like put yourself out there and kind of like said like, oh, like, do you mind if I like tag along, like that could be fun. Like, we just need to do it. And I did it this week, and exposure therapy, and I did not get rejected. So how exciting is that? Literally. But also the thing is here that there is going to be a desensitization curve. Or desensitization curve, and we kind of talked about it, but you're gonna get habituated to that rejection. You're gonna get habituated to that no. It's gonna be like, okay, no thanks. Well, that's fine. You're like the seventh person to tell me no, like it's literally fine. Like some people say yes, some people say no. It's like, you know what, whatever. Think about college applications and maybe job applications too. Some of them you're going to get an interview. Some of them you're not going to get an interview. They're going to say, better luck next time. Like, no, thank you. Sometimes you're going to have more rejections than interviews. Sometimes you're going to have more interviews than rejections. It ebbs and flows, but you get used to hearing that no. And the same thing goes for relationship rejections and, human relationships. But just trust that you're gonna get desensitized at some point, and that no isn't gonna sting as much as it used to. And the more that you practice, the better you'll get, and the more you'll get closer to your authentic self, to your individuality. It's going to be less scary to lean into that because you're used to people, rejecting you, and, maybe some people are going to like you, maybe some people aren't, and that's totally fine. There's somebody for everyone when it comes to friendships or whatever. I was listening to a podcast, and this girl sent in a dilemma. She was like, oh, like, I moved to a new city, and I feel like I'm boring, like, I don't really have any, like, close friends. Like, I'm really scared of people thinking I'm boring. And something I love that Sophia said, it was the Girls Bathroom podcast. Sophia was like, nobody's boring. Like, nobody's boring. Like, that's a weird adjective. Like, there's always somebody for somebody, right? Like, some people are crazy extroverts, crazy personality, and people are going to think that's too much, and they're going to be like, no, thank you, that's too much for me. It might be seen as annoying, maybe, even. And some people are, like, really, really, really quiet, and it's like, oh, wow, they're boring. But no, like, somebody else who's quiet and who likes kind of, like, softer humor or communication is going to absolutely love them. Nobody is annoying or boring for the right person. So that rejection, again and again, constantly getting rejected, it's only going to redirect you to the people who matter most and to who you are supposed to be surrounded by. And everything happens for a reason, and that applies to relationships as well. But I hope that you guys enjoyed listening to this episode. I think that's all I have for you guys today. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulty. I don't know what's going on. I was literally staring at it, you guys. Like, I don't know. If you guys can see, like, my screen right now, it, like, has these little lines of when it's recording. And for some reason, like, every time I would look at it, it was like a straight line. But I guess I was being quiet when I was looking at it. So I was thinking, oh, it's because I'm not speaking. It was a rookie mistake, but I digress. Mistakes happen. That's okay. And we come back stronger. We don't make the same mistakes again. Okay. I think that's really all. I'm just babbling now, but please let me know your thoughts. Reach out at KalopsiaPod, KalopsiaPod on Instagram and TikTok, and it's at Sydneydjotita, SYDNEYDJOTITA on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for my personal stuff. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. DM me. Let me know if you want to see something specific. I would love to take your recommendations, but I feel like, yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'm so thankful that you guys clicked on this week's episode, video, whatever, however you're listening to it, and I hope to see you on the next one. Have a good weekend. See you next Friday.